Alright guys, I usually say I'll try and make this short, but this time this is going to be a long one, and but I think you'll find it worth it. I thought I'd done a video on my video workflows pipeline, but I don't think I have, not for LTX, and it's getting to a good place now, and the ones you're looking at right here are what I used for Devil in the Wind, which wasn't all that good, but I was learning a lot on it because it sort of stretched LTX limits a bit. So what I'm going to do today is go through each one of these, and I won't say as quickly as I can because I'm not going to do it quickly. I'm going to take my time and until I get bored, which does happen, and I'll explain to you everything I'm doing. And there's some really, these are the steps. There's essentially I make the first one at 480 by 201, and I make it that low because I want to get the structure as quickly as possible. I'm on a 3060 RTX, low VRAM and low system RAM, 32 gigabyte system RAM. I'm on Windows 10. If you want to look at all what my setup is, so you can go, oh yeah, but you've got one of those, you can find everything, wrong page, everything about what I have here and what I've currently got set up. Now I might actually be slightly lying to you because let me just check one thing. There. Okay, I'm going to have to make a little amendment because I had some problems with you don't need to put this in at the moment, but when I release the I've been working on some batch workflow tools, which is really important and really helpful. I'm going to deal with that next and update it and then give it to you all. That'll be a couple of weeks work probably, but in using that I ran into some problems that meant I had to start putting the switches back in to stop the problems. The problems were only because of batch memory. It seems to have fixed them. I'm going to have to go through and test that a bit more because I don't like putting these switches in, and I'll tell you for why. Basically, putting switches in, you're kneecapping your latest updated version of Comfy UI, and sure, sometimes you have to do that. There are certain situations where it helps, but you know, what's the point of kneecapping something? You know, it's just so, I try not to, but you know, admittedly, if you actually look at my website, I spent all of last year kneecapped, so you know, what am I talking about? But yeah, the speed difference I got between that and when I upgraded and stopped using switches and got everything working well was phenomenal. So that's where I learned, sure, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but are you really enjoying the time it's taking when you could be doing it quicker? But anyway, it's a much of a muchness. You do what you have to do. Your setup would be different to mine. I need to get on with this. So let's, where did I get lost completely? Let's go back to there and to there. So let me talk through these. The first one, I make the structure. It's fast, a few minutes, like 3 or 4 minutes, even on my 3060. And I can run it again if I don't like it, and that's where I develop the prompt to get it looking right. Now let me just fire up a prompt to show you what's going on there. I'm going to eat some chocolate while we're waiting. Right, this is Ames. So I've got a mouthful of chocolate now. This is Ames. This is where I develop all my images and ideas and then run them through Reaper, as I've showed you in the previous video, reorganize them all, which you can do from here quite easily. And as you can see, I reorganized them from that, which is how I began them, to that, which is where I ended up, to tell the story in as much as it got told. And then I run them through the videos things. Now in the shots you'll see things like, let's just fire one up here. So workflow. So I'll develop my workflow, my prompt. That's at this stage 1, and it's fast, it's dirty, it does the job. Now this comes from an old, when I say old, a couple of months old, so I've got to finish this bit of chocolate, extension, which I've never actually tested since we went to LTX 2.3. I have no idea if it works, but I leave it all in there because I don't really go beyond 10 seconds. If I'm going to, then I want to control it, so I manage it. Otherwise, this is just kind of doing its own thing, otherwise with basic prompts. So I don't use it, but I leave it in there in case. Now, recent updates with Comfy UI. I haven't actually updated it in a week or so because I was working on this project. I didn't want to crash that, but they seem to have started doing this thing where if you don't have the models listed, even if it's bypassed, it reds it up, and that's what that is. But I don't really use extra models at this stage. Oh, there's something that needs to change. There's a new there's some new things I've got to tell you about. One is the new distilled LoRa. I use the dev model. I use this in all my setups now. The dev model with the 1.1 distilled LoRa that just came out recently. I think I got this off KidJai's Hugging Face site. You'll have to figure that out for yourself where it is. I can't remember. But, you know, pause that, write it into Google, search it with KidJai's name, you'll find it. I use it with the dev and about a 0.6, and that works. I've got some new loras I've got to show you, but I'll show you that in the next one. Everything else is the same. Something I recently learned, I'll tell you about it in a bit, because it's not relevant for this workflow. So this workflow, 480 by 201, that's because I work to 39:1 aspect ratio. Firstly, because I prefer it, it's a bit more cinematic. Secondly, it's faster than that. And thirdly, LTX doesn't seem to mind about it, and the quality is just good. I do 241 frames at 24 seconds. I work to that religiously. Now, one thing that I've not done in any of this is lip sync. I've left it in there, and I did it previously, and I did it more with LTX2 and less with LTX 2.3. Partly because initially LTX 2.3 had problems in the mouth movement, and that's been fixed by merging ambient sound. So if you're very into the lip sync stuff and you need to use lip sync and you're like, oh God, this guy hasn't done any lip sync, I'm planning to. I'm going to get back to it probably next, after I fix up the batch processing stuff. But there were some problems, and that's also why I paused, because it's a lot of hard work putting lip sync in. Music videos are a lot easier, and I kind of was hoping things would improve. They haven't much, so yeah. But one trick, if you're not getting much mouth movement with LTX 2.3 model, the trick is to add in ambient, a very subtle, silent, almost silent ambient background sound to your dialogue, so that there's no actual silence, and then the mouth seems to work. Other than that, I haven't really used it since. It's all in there if I need it. It'll be something I'll look at again later. So all I really do here is add in whatever a 20-year-old male skinhead in black jacket, jeans and black shoes walks through a busy corporate office. No one pays him any attention. Doors stay open, camera follows. I've started adding negative. I'm going to change all this because I'm going to start adding in all the prompts for the batch processing. So there'll be a new version of AIMS coming out. I posted about that on my Patreon. I'll deal with that another day once it's ready. But yeah, I include that's got the image prompt, or currently image prompt here, and you can put all this in a CSV, or if you use AIMS you can export it all out from CSV. Anyway, so yeah, I put that in there, start developing, fire it off, it makes it, pops it out here, wherever it is there somewhere, and I'll have a few goes until that's working, and what I'll generally get is crap like this. Let's show you one. Look at that, low quality, it's all bitty and crappy and blah blah blah. So, but I've got some structure, and that's what I need. So the structure's there, I'm happy with it. 10-second run, on to the next stage. Now let me just quickly see if there's anything else I need to mention in that workflow for you. I don't think there is. There's not much to it. Oh, the nags, all this is just speed up stuff. That's now disabled because last time I spoke to KidJai, it seems like you don't need this so much. I'll put a little note in there. if you do need to turn it back on. I use sage attention, still using the memory stuff. I don't touch any of this. The only thing is I've disabled that because I'm not using the audio, so what's the point? Nag is a very strong feature, especially when you're trying to control what's going on, and I use it quite a lot. So that's the negative prompt. And you need a nag because, as you all should know by now, if you're using config 1, negative prompts don't work. You use config 1 because you're using speed up loras, and so you need something to give it negative prompt, and that's what the nag is, coded by KidGi. Okay, so that's that workflow. I don't think at this stage there's slight changes to the old one in that I probably might have changed the sampler. I've probably changed the sigmas number that I use, and that is basically the steps, and that'll create a little curve. This preview will show you the curve. My understanding of it is the first you do when you're trying to build structure, you want 8 steps or whatever that is, and the early part is high, and when you're in the upscaling stage, as I'll show you in a moment, you don't need it so much. Right, so that's the first one, and builds you the initial video that you want. Now the alternative to that is if I'm just using one image to drive it, which I often am at first, and then when that doesn't work and I'm like, oh well, I like the start but I don't like the end, then I'll here's an interesting one, then I'll go to the first frame last frame workflow, which is this one, which was originally by Fruit, PHR00T. He did some excellent work. I haven't seen him around for a while, so I don't know what he's doing since developing that. Those errors you get are because of that problem with the model thing I said. That the model's not even in there, it's bypassed, but it gives you the error. You can ignore it or not. I'm going to tell you about these now, and I'll tell you about another thing as well. If you want to do not safe for work, go to KidGi again and seek out his obliterated heretic LoRa, right, and put it in there, and don't use the heretic here that I have as the actual text encoder. I don't know the long and short reasons, but I definitely found putting it in there gave me changes I didn't want in the characters, whereas putting up here the characters stay the same, and it allows for non-safe for work stuff. So this works, and you only need it. I might have done it higher later, but start at 0.5 and see how you go. This is the usual distill LoRa, which I also need to change because the 1.1's come out, and it only came out recently. And again, that's from KidGi. I just keep it at 0.6 religiously. Now this is one I got because what I was doing, if you've seen the Devil in the Wind video, I was trying to do a transition in the silly middle tacky trashy childish bit where he goes from being in pajamas to being an old man on the beach being mollycoddled by some hot babes, as you do. And it's the transition was quite a fun LoRa. I ended up putting it up at 1.5, gives you kind of more like traditional transition, like a wipe or a opening circle or something like that, whereas I found 1 blends it a bit more transition-y. So but whether you use it at that point or not, this is still a stage where I only go to 208. This is a bit confusing. This is old settings. Really it should be 208, but I think you get forced to 201 or maybe even 192. But what I stick, the important bit for me is the 480 and the roughly 2 to 39. Again, I stick to 24 frames per second and 241 frames. This is all stuff that where Fruit left in an extra upscaler. I don't even use it, but I haven't removed it. But that's here, but it's always just bypassed. And I go out there, and there's nothing much else. Again, I use the same settings. Oh, by the way, this workflow used to have problems with audio, so I never used it with audio, and I think I even ripped it out. But I did test it. I don't really use that. That was recommended by LTX guys. I haven't. It just took too long, and I don't really use any of these either, but I leave them in. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the audio. I tested it in here and it worked fine. And here's another thing I've actually changed. I worked fine because I swapped the sampler out. This thing was causing all that weird noise in it. So once I went to the LTX 2.3 model, which was known for improving audio, and it still gave weird sounds, I swapped this out as a test and it worked perfectly. I left it in there in case I had to double back, but so far I haven't. Oh, there you go. There's that little info from me about that. So I've left it in there. So that's one of the changes to this workflow this time around. I don't think there's too much else changed. And again, I'm doing it small size. So these two, stage one is where I'm making the 480 by 201 that aspect ratio, and doing it as fast as I can to get the structure. And once I get the structure, if it doesn't work with that one, I'll grab something. I'll grab a last frame and vajazzle it in the image pipeline, base image pipeline, come back, use it as a last frame and get there. I don't really bother with middle frames at this stage. Right, let's move on to some exciting new developments. So the next thing that happens is I take that 420 and 420 sized image, 480 by 201 video that comes out once I'm happy with it, and I shove it through a detailer, a WAN detailer, using the Phantom model, of which I have the 1.3B. Now I would use 14B if I could, but it takes a hell of a long time, and I use the 1.3B because it's actually pretty good. And what you want to get for this is, now you can get a few funky, let me dig that out actually and drop it in there. This came from a guy called David Snow, and he uses these with his 1.3B, and I think he even uses them with the HuMo 1.7, but you know, pause that, have a look, go and find these. I haven't really tested them yet. I used to use that previously way back when with WAN last year, and there's a 4K that used to give black results that don't really work, but this one I don't use it because I don't really see what it's doing, and in the detailer I'm not really seeing what it's doing, and this one I don't think I've tested thoroughly either. So all I really use is this, the Cause V, because you want that for speeding it up, and it does. And I set it to 1. This is T to V. Phantom is a T to V model, and what's great about Phantom is it honors the inbound image. Now normally you'd have all these embeds and everything like that, but so this means you can bang the denoise up a bit and it will keep the character here, or it should. What actually happens is you've got a character in such a punched in state at 420 that, you know, you don't do you really want that kept? No. So let it go loose, throw in the exact same prompt that you'll have manufactured rather nicely by then. That's the idea anyway. And so I start using the same prompt throughout, and I'll only change it if it's not working. I don't even bother with translating what all that is. I use a GUF text encoder for this. I don't think it matters if you do or you don't. Also, for whatever reason, I've thrown in an FP32 there just to take longer, probably talk to myself. Again, sage attention, just stuff I haven't really touched since this was always my polishing workflow. 4 steps, 1 config, LCM normal I like for this, and a denoise very low of 0.25 for Phantom. And the output result will be, should I show you this one? That probably is it actually. No, let's not show you that one because I changed him part way through, so that's not very good picture, that one. What shall I use to show you where it's a good quality or good enough to show you? I don't know. So anyway, that'll be my first, that'll probably be the second. Yeah, all right, that's because the ones with, I've changed them all now because I've gone up to the full grade, but the ones with these ghosty shadows and kind of fucked up bits, that'll actually be the result of that. So that is the result of putting it through the first stage which I showed you, and I'll get that out, and that looks absolutely shit, but I've got structure. That's all I care about at that stage. At this stage, I'll run it through the Phantom workflow, and it'll give me that. Now what it's doing is it's defining things a lot better. There's still this speckling, and I could probably fight to get rid of it. And I'll explain more about why I improve it at this low size. I've actually increased the size there. Let me see what's going on there. I don't want to give you false information. I'm not increasing the size, or am I? Oh, I am. I'm scaling it. Oh, I didn't even know I was doing that. So, well, that's worth noting. But yeah, do what you like. Take the time with it. Get it how good you want it. I think there's an argument for making it relatively good for the next stage, but that's something for you to fiddle with. I can tell you, let's just confirm I'm doing that for all of these. I'm pretty sure I am. That's definitely one that's come through Phantom. Yeah, 960 by 384. So I'm doubling them up, and you can see it's going from that in the first one where I just get structure and the look and I'm okay with it, to that coming out of Phantom, which is, you know, you can start, it's starting to build the guy. Now I'm not too concerned about the look at this stage, because this is going to get changed quite drastically in the next run. You know, it's adding people and all sorts in the next run, so there's quite a lot of change that happens next. And you'll notice I've still got the wrong guy, and I'll talk about that in a bit. This is down to user laziness, not the tools, I'll be honest, and I've kind of figured that out now. Anyway, so that's the second one. So that's, we're now to stage 2. I did test all the others, VACE and HuMo at this stage. HuMo would probably be better, but Phantom does the job in the way I like it. A little bit better at this stage than VACE, I believe, the WAN 1.3 VACE self-forcing, so I've kept it there. And also, just to add a bit of textural variety, I throw the VACE in at the end anyway. But let's not talk about the end at the beginning. We're at stage 2. Next up is stage 3. Let me just check out if there's anything I need to tell you about this. No, it's a really simple workflow. It's an old trick for detailing where you do low denoise at this size, and you know, you can change that down if you want, or go to 1.5 depending on your hardware, or go higher if you want. But I'm obviously, as you can see there, doing 24 frames per second, 241 frames. This one I think takes a few minutes, but I run this through the batch process because I can just pile them all through once I've got all 40 shots. And that's why I expect, you know, do it overnight, and then it doesn't matter how long it takes, almost, as long as it's done overnight. But yeah, okay, let's jump off that. And what was I doing? Yeah, let's throw this one in. So next one is stage 3. This is the big boy. This is LTX, and I'll show you this one first and then the multi-frames after. Now the big change here, can you see it? Probably not. What I've changed here is we've now gone from, I just had these 2 upscalers in series and 1 sampling stage at the end. I tested a whole bunch of the infamous 3-stage sampler that's been going around the last week or 2, and hold on. And I did not like the results, and that told me that my workflow was better, for me at least, but it gave me results enough that I went, whoa, that's improving it. So I came back and I butchered my workflow, and I added in a second sampler, and then I had to go and figure out all the rules about what's going on and how to set it up best and what to use, and I'll explain what I've chosen and why in a second. So let me just talk you through this in the first place, because I've never actually done a video properly on this. I think I have actually, but not in this, you know, constructive workshop level. So what I'm now using, and I suggest you give it a go. You can see again the distilled 1.1. I started using it in this one. I've got the standard Dev 5 Guff LTX2. It's all working, it's all the same throughout for the LTX runs. This is a new VBVR LoRa that's come out recently. Now there's 2 types you can get, and there's one that's on Civitai, and you have to go through some furry porn to get to it, and that's rather disturbing. I just find Civitai completely disturbing, I'll be honest. It seems like somewhere that the FBI should be investigating, but I'll go through it to get the loras I need. And I think I ought to show you the LinkedIn. No, it's VBVR. Yeah, this is the one. The reason I ended up with that one, first I went to this one, Lycan Studio, because there was one that came out quite some time ago and it didn't really work. And as of, it works for WAN, works very well apparently, but the one that came out for LTX didn't work so well and people poo-pooed it. And as of 10 days ago, which would be the 8th of April 2026, 10 days ago, this one came out and I downloaded it, but then when I did, someone pointed out this and they went, you know, and even the guy who made it went, oh, that's a good idea, I might try that. So he's going to go back. This is going to get updated. If you read the model card, this one is for 96,000 training. He's busy training on 240,000, and it'll be 40. So this is training on videos, and what it does, and you know, I followed the links to find this. There's no link here, but you have to go on Civitai, and I can't show you that because it's blocked in Australia. And frankly, I can understand why. But you know, there's the usual tricks for bypassing that if you need to, for adults. And yeah, that's the name of the one that I pulled off there. And actually, this is really good. You could put it at strength 1, but I'd never trust things too much control. So strength 8 for that. But what it does, it's trained on lots of videos, and what it does, and I found it does, and I can confirm it does from this shot in particular. Do I have the old one? This one, you know, it's not a common thing to climb over a car. See where his foot went? Not a common thing to climb over a car, and so it's unlikely that the model has been trained on many examples of it. So sometimes the physics gets weird, and it, you know, put his foot through a windscreen. It's not showing it because this is the, I've used it since, but used that LoRa to fix it. But yeah, the foot goes through there. But here, like his leg was going through, even through there. There's just some of the physics wasn't working. But the end result, using that VBFR, actually seems to normalize the behavior around things. So there's a certain aspect where it's reasoning out, in theory, the physics and stuff. Not perfect. The fight scene was barely improved by it. Let me just show you that. But I believe there's a fight LoRa, and my fight scene was not very good once the fast motion goes, and LTX is notorious for fast motion issues. The fix apparently is to go to 50 frames per second. Oh god, are you hearing all that? No. Good, hopefully not. Yeah, the trick is to go to 50 frames per second. Apparently sorts out the motion, but you know, on a low VRAM we can't do that. We'll be here all year. So yeah, there's things that still need solving, but that really helps. I really enjoyed using it. I just got it late in the day, so it was late in the process. Amateur hour, someone convinced me to try. It's not porn. It's supposed to fix faces and make things generally look more realistic. And for this video, I wanted that, so it was worth a go. And I left it in there, but honestly, I don't know what it did or didn't do. So, and I tend to find that with loras, less loras is better in my opinion, the less you're using. Now, having said that, I've just seen some new ones I've got to try out, but I'll tell you all about those later. I tend to find that because I'm using a reference image to drive this, and in this workflow, there's the option for 2. Now, one thing that's changed here is, actually, I better change this for you, otherwise you will be confused. One thing is, if you've got 2 images now, you need to put them into both. That'll be wrong image for that, but it doesn't matter. And also, Kid's eyes, video in place, you know, reference image nodes are great for first frame, last frame. I don't find them so good for using a middle frame. You can increase the number of images and put the numbers, but I don't find it works so well. It causes, it does a sort of jump. It'll put the frame in there, but it won't blend everything into it. So I use, that'll be the next workflow. I'll show you in a minute. So let me just save this out because this is going to be needed for you guys. Not batch runs. Hang on, I'm not in a batch run, am I? No. That one. 12. Okay, superseded. There we go. So, yeah. So with this one, I'll use first frame, last frame, or I'll disable that. And you don't disable these, you just reduce them to 1. The first frame is index 0, the last frame is index... Oh my God, I've been doing something wrong. I've just noticed. Am I doing that wrong? No, I need to put it in there. I have been doing that wrong. Wow. Okay, I've been forgetting to put it in there. First frame, see, this is because it's new to me too. Wow, oh, that's really... that's thrown me. I wonder what difference it would make in the long run. It probably figured it out, but -1 makes it the last frame. So as you can see here, you've got in there going into there. I'm going to have to save that now. God, I'll save it over the same one because I didn't change much, did I? It's that one, wasn't it? Yeah. So first frame. Oh, Jesus, it's all happening live, isn't it? I mean, it just goes to show how important this kind of stage is for actually going over your own work and going talking through it. So you've got your last frame goes into both and your first frame goes into both, and where those are essentially going is that one goes to sampler 1, so it'll go upstage first, use that, at the end use that, bing bang bong, and then it goes from there to the next sampler. These are just memory things I've been using, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then into the last sampler once it's been upscaled here, and you've got the same thing. Maybe you can combine these into both, but I didn't. And again, you've got first frame and you've got last frame, and you want that to be applied to the whole thing again here. So you've got your pre-built original video here that you've already done in the previous workflows, and then you've run it through Phantom to improve it, and or run it through whatever you want to improve it, to give it a bit more structure, bit more detail. Worth it, I found, because then it's less work for this to try to construct it, especially since you're using the same images to drive it. And in many cases, because I'm using the same model, I use the same seed. Now, I've seen a lot of people using different seeds, and I kind of go, why would you do that? Because you're then fighting each version instead of making the same one, whatever it chooses for that in seed 43. It's going to choose again all the way through, and that makes sense to me. So I do that. But what I have found, and you will see me religiously changing now, because of the Skippy guy, and I think it actually does it in 43 as well. So let's actually just change that to 44 and save it again. So that's seed for the first upscale, that's seed for the second upscale. 42 causes that weird Skippy thing that was pissing me off for so much. And where does he do it really badly? I'm not sure, but you'll see it. If you use 42 or 43 and you have someone walking towards the camera or away from the camera, they'll do a little skip. I was fighting it in the prompt, turned out it was the seed. Do I save that again? Yeah, I'll save that for you. Still on 12. Okay, so I've shown you the loras, the memory and NAG group is the same as usual. I'm not using sound or audio. I do need to test that. It's untested in this, you know, letting you know that's got the heretic in. As I said before, if you're going to do not safe for work stuff, don't use the Heretic. Use the Heretic LoRa. Get that from Kijai. And that's the nag thing. I don't change any of these. It's all the memory stuff. I disable the audio for now, and use the same prompt and the same negative prompt and fire it through. What have I done there? I forgot to move that back. God, man, I'm going to be doing so many saves. There's the audio stuff still that I've disabled for now. Sorry I haven't had time to look at that and test it, but you know, it's early days still, isn't it? And I will be doing that next, because I'm going to focus again on lip sync shortly once I've done all the automation. But I'll talk about that later. So I'll put some notes on the second stage sampler. I did a lot of testing of the different samplers to use. I didn't change this one too much. This is the first upscale. I left it at LCM, but what I did use is the more manual things, because that's the one that's really driving structural change, because the inbound video is not at high quality. So this is where you start driving the higher quality. That's my understanding of it, and LCM probably isn't the best to use, but I use it. Upscalers on version 1.1. That doesn't really give us any extra benefits, so if you're on the old one, so be it, but you know, you may as well download the later one. It's more for when people are doing higher frame per second and longer extended videos. Apparently there were some quirks that needed fixing. Now what I did find was using less steps or sigmas here is better on the second upscaler, and that surprised me. But also using Euler Ancestral is better here as well, and that surprised me, because I wasn't really sure what the dealio was. And what's even weirder is all this together has actually sped up the results. So this is happening for me in under 10 minutes, and before it was taking 15 or 16. Now whether this is where I had to add in, I was getting some problems, and so I downloaded and added in Comfy UI memory cleanup, and I actually highly recommend adding these in: the RAM cleanup, the VRAM cleanup, sticking them at the very end of your workflow as it's going out to the final pass. I've got it here as it's going out to VHS Combine, and it seems to do a good job, and I haven't had Noom. And the other thing it does is it speeds it up, and I was kind of surprised. But I also, as I showed you earlier, have stuck in all the low RAM disabled stuff. I put those back in, and I've left them back in, and for now I'm leaving it like that. Now Comfy UI has notorious problems at the moment, especially with subgraphs, which I personally hate and don't use. Whenever I get something with subgraphs, I explode it and unsubgraph it, which is fine, because you know it's got problems. But the next update might fix it. I'm on an older version, like 18 or something. I don't know what version I'm on. Where is it? Yeah, 18. I think, you know, it's known ever since then. It's had problems with the subgraphs and stuff, so I don't know. Or maybe it was that version, Comfy front end. I don't know. It is what it is. I'm okay with this for now. I don't need to update it, so I haven't further, because there's no memory gains or anything to be had from updating it beyond where I'm at the moment. So yeah, that's the ancestor. That's it. Use this Comfy memory. I tested a few of them. This, two reasons I went with this. Firstly, it does both of those. At first, most of them I wasn't convinced do anything. If you've got those switches in, they definitely do stuff. But I've actually improved the situation. Possibly it's disabling some of the dynamic VRAM. But when I watch this thing, which is blapping like hell right now because OBS Studio's running, but this is my real heartbeat that I watch. And one interesting thing I've discovered is, do not leave when you're running runs. Save yourself 2 minutes on every 10 minutes by not sitting on that open. Don't minimize this window. Don't do that and leave it running. Leave this up and running. Put it on something where there's no videos playing, and then sit on another dead browser page, and seriously, that will drop down in Comfy UI, and I just flatline now, which I've never seen before because there's always something. I'm using it about 13%, and just getting away from sitting on this window to sitting on that window in Firefox has reduced the blap by 13%, and that's got me 2 minutes on every 10, and that's probably why it's a lot faster. And the other reason I watch this is because I want to see that at full capacity all the time, and this not going up to the top either. In fact, the truth is, because I've got so little physical memory, this is often right at the top and overloaded into, you know, static. I also have a static swap file set on an SSD for, I think it's 32 gigabytes. So that's just fall over to stop it black screening when it crashes or when it ooms. The other thing with the switches is when you oom, you can push through it if those are set. But actually I was able to push through ooms before, but I haven't had to do that this time. I've not had any ooms, but yeah. That's the proc exec thing I talk about in other videos. Download it, proc exec 64, download it from Microsoft if you're on Windows. I highly recommend you sit and watch that whenever you're running workflows and learn about the best use of your hardware in that. Just to decide, my GPU I undervolt slightly. I'm in Brisbane. I'm stood here stark naked because it's nearly winter and it's still 30 degrees. So that's why I'm not on camera today, because I can't be bothered to dress and put the aircon on and all that. And I quite like the heat. But yeah, the thing is my GPU has enough heat already, and so I underclock it so that I don't have to then put all this crystal stuff up here or sit watching the temperature, which usually makes me panic anyway. And I just stick a fan. I open the side and stick a fan on it, have it undervolted, so I know you don't need it high volt because we're not gamers. But yeah, it does the trick. It's lasted quite a while long. I've had it about 5 years, the 360, and fingers crossed it'll last me a while longer yet. I think that's about it. On this, I stick that to CUDA instead of standard, and all that does is it means, I understand it will load it into here faster and then chuck it over to memory, but I might be wrong about that. But you know, it runs well. It's working. I didn't even know I had that set to crop, but there you go. What else do I need to tell you about this workflow? I don't think there's much else. It was the first time I really looked at this workflow when I undid all this stuff to try and replicate that here. I hadn't really looked at it, I just press and go. I'll tell you one interesting thing that's happened this week. I got permanently banned from Stable Diffusion Reddit for arguing with someone. And I told, if you remember way back when in my videos, if you followed me long enough, you know what, I'm just going to cut that out. You don't need to know about that. Anyway, back to the matter in hand. So we're on to that. Wow, 42 minutes. Yeah, we haven't even got anywhere yet. Okay, so the multi-frames, I'll just quickly go through that. Multi-frames is the same setup as the previous one, or should be. And this is an example where I went nuts with it. Now, what I had in here, as I said, Kid's Eyes ones don't work so well. So you use add guide multi here. Now what you actually put in here is number of guides. So you've got the first frame. These are all numbered wrong. I'm not going to renumber them because I'm running out of time now and I want to do this in under an hour. So this didn't work. It was this shot here. Kicked in the door, this one. Last go was that one. So I was having so many problems. I've still got problems with sizing, and then his glasses, then he was going out the wrong door, and it still does weird things. Didn't work. It does that because at the end of your multi-frames, it does something with the guide frames. It sticks them all at the end. I don't really understand that. But again, you've got two samplers. It's the exact same workflow as that, but with multi-frames put in instead. So these are up to date with each other, or should be. And what you've got here is the frame number that it's inserting it at. I actually would recommend reducing the middle frames to 0.7. It seemed to work a bit better, but I haven't done it here. I forgot. So supposedly I used Shotcut. I'll just quickly show you that, just so free to download, open source. It's really good for quick and dirty editing of videos. It's got a few quirks that are annoying, but one of the things it's useful for is frame counting, because it will show you it in the frame number. You just drop your video in there and it'll show you it. But that's what I use. It's possible I need to calculate it somewhat differently, because it clearly isn't putting it in the right spots, but it was close enough. So I had frame 48, frame 72, frame 178, frame 192, first frame, last frame, you know, the numbering 0 and -1 for first frame, last frame. So that was those 4 extra frames I stuck in, and it worked fairly well, because what I was getting before was a lot worse. It's the add guide multi-node. Took a bit of figuring out to kind of, you know, spaghetti it into the situation in the way it needed it, and disable these ones. I've just left route clippers in there to, you know, but it works fine, and it's the same principle as the previous one, same prompts. I probably actually, looking at the size of that, I got LLM to give me a better prompt, because I was really fighting trying to get the results I wanted. Oh, well, that's probably part of the problem. I would have done that. Yeah, because it'll add these frames on the end, because I would have run it through here once already, and you can see where it's going wrong, and then I've used that again. One thing I've noticed about, set this to LTXX feed, by the way, because then when you put frames in there and put some random number, it'll adjust it to what this can handle. Otherwise you'll get errors in a command prompt when you try and run anything. But what was I saying just then? Yeah, one thing I've noticed about LTX is you can shove the exact same video through again and it doesn't degrade. Now WAN just constantly degrades really fast when you do that, so that's interesting, and I don't know why. But yeah, the end when you've done multi-frames, you get all the end frames shoved on the end, and you have to crop them off or use the frame load cap like I did there. That'll explain why I got weird things at the end, and I hadn't even thought about that. So this is working rather well. Use it. And finally, the winning thing. I won't show you these two because they're based on the same idea. I will provide them in the workflow pack, the video workflow pipeline pack that I'm going to give you on Patreon. I'm not going to put it on the website because I can't be bothered to keep updating it. I'll put it up there later when I've got more to update, but anyone wants this, you go to Patreon. It's free. You don't have to be a member or anything, just download it, click on the link, download it, you can get it from there. This will be the work pack that I put in here. I won't show you these two because they're basically much the same as this one, and this is where I use, it's a final polish. It works really well. I really like it. I actually didn't use it on that one. I used it differently on the last one. Let me show you the difference if there's a good one. I only really used everything properly in these two final frames. So you've got this one. You can see I'm finally getting much better structure on the face. It's been a long journey to get there. That really only happened in the last goes because I was getting, look at his eyes. This was most of the journey through this development phase, has been really fighting the eyes, and not as bad as this guy. Oh, look at that. It's just, oh, it's a nightmare. Now it turned out it was really being caused by the initial first frame image, and you really need, it couldn't fix it. LTX couldn't sort it out, and in the end I poached the guy from, I showed this in the other video, I poached the guy's face from the end, overlaid it, that's it run through LTX, and then this is it after going through HuMo. Now you might go, oh, there's not much difference, but I can see a huge difference. HuMo Phantom, oh, there's that skip. Did you see that? There's that walking skip from seed 42 and 43. But yeah, the eyes way better, and HuMo, there's the skip, and HuMo does a better job. Here it is. Let's do the same thing here. So if this was with LTX and all the fixes I could try, even going through Phantom and HuMo to fix that, but then what I did was added a better eye on the end, and it's even sort of collapsing in there a bit. at a distance and still hasn't quite got him. And then this would have been the final one. Just fixes it up that little bit more, HuMo does. And what I really like about HuMo is I would have chosen Phantom, and then I tried HuMo, and it needs all these settings. It needs his embed settings, and Abel Jones, if you've heard of him, is the main guy for HuMo. He knows his stuff, he knows all about it, but he's up the big boy end with the big cards and using the 14B or 17B or whatever it is, and Clown Shark samplers and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, oh my god, I tried it and came back a day later and it was still running, and you know, 81 frames I couldn't get. But what I like about HuMo and using it in the USDU sampler, which comes from Ultimate Upscale, very out of date, and I really don't want this thing to disappear because it's brilliant. I'll talk about it in a minute. But what it turns out that this thing will just work going straight into it. And there you can see, oh, there you go. I've got all of those David Snow recommendations in there in a different order. Oh, I'm even using the Ultra WAN. So there you go. Get hold of all of those. I've got no idea where I got them from, but I've hunted them and found them. They'll all be on Hugging Face. Yeah, stick them in there. Use them because they will make a difference altogether. And HuMo is the 1.7B. I use the FP16 model. This finishes in 10 minutes, so it's not quick, but it's worth it. You don't change the size, you don't change the frame count. You keep it at 1920 on the long edge, which is the size I'm going for. You keep it at 24 frames on the way out. You don't change anything, and you don't worry about the length being 241, and yet HuMo and WAN doesn't do it because the USDU takes that into account. Now, what settings I've got here, again, I've got it on C42, but this is a polishing phase, so that actually won't make much difference at this stage. And also that was LTX, not WAN, so what am I on about? I tested a load of different things. I've left you some notes in here about what I tested. I really found ULA Ancestral with normal to be quite actually superior. Denoise, I can't go above 0.5 because it comes out as mist. That was the same with WAN 2.2 1.3B and Phantom 1.3B. I tile it, measure the size of whatever you're doing and tile it accordingly so it fits. It will get the best speed and bang for buck out of quality. So I'm at 640 by 384, and if you bang that up to 7 or 8 or something, you'll see the tiling and you'll realize what it's doing. I don't really change these much from what I got them to at this stage, and you can't go more steps, you can't go higher config, it all goes wrong for me. And to be honest, I don't need to. That's as good as I need it now at this stage. I could even maybe, I've left LTX in there because I was testing the new LTX and all the new loras, not in this one obviously. I was testing it, and the only way you do that if you want to use it or use one of the other workflows is bypass that lot, unbypass that lot, and just plug all those in to replace those. It's really fairly straightforward. Anyway, that is the workflow. I'll now end talking, just coming up on the hour. That's quite a lot to take in, but my god, there's some brilliant changes in there. I'm really pleased with it. The next thing I'm going to do is automation to speed the whole process up. I'm also going to look at lip sync because I want to automate someday drivers. Yeah, I'm going to look at lip sync at some point because I'll probably focus on the Highwayman. I want to go back to that and see what I can fix of what WAN did and compare it to how WAN was, and infinite talk and stuff like that. And I'll get this automation working to fast track stuff out and give it to you, and aims as well, which I'm going to put behind a paid paywall on Patreon just for cheaps so that you can get a copy of it. That'll do for today. Yeah, you get all this off Patreon. I'm just going to start waffling. I think that'll do. Thank you very much. It's been a journey to get to here. A good journey, fruitful, profitable. The thing I see next is where we're at with AI is Seed Dance was out 2 months ago. AI, our stuff tends to lag about 4 months behind subscription. Seed Dance is a leap forward on everything else. The others don't really seem to be quite as good. I'm hoping the 4-month lag rule, where we lagged 4 months behind everything, will stay true, and within 2 months we're going to be able to do stuff that's almost as good as Seed Dance. But for that to happen, we need a leap. We're due a leap. Nothing much has been going on. Quen and WAN have gone closed source. Just not great things, but you know, it's been slow progress and it's progressing still. We need a leap, and then when that leap happens, it's going to make things more realistic, and I think that's what people are looking at more now. And this VBVR LoRa that I showed you, wherever, that was the first time I've gone, oh, this has improved what's going on. The reasoning LoRa, it's improved what's going on in the structure, in the physics, and that's what needs to change, because and also character consistency still a nightmare. But I also realise it's actually, I have to spend more time on making them look good in the first shots. But anyway, that'll do for today. Thank you very much for coming along. I hope you got something out of it, and you did, because you got a bunch of workflows. See you later.